aften og velkommen til Olivers Godnathistorie oplæsning. Jeg blev klippet, sådan er det. Vi skulle klippes jo, og der skulle lidt permanent ny krølle, men det har haft hat på hele dagen, så mit hår ser absurd fladt ud, så krøllerne er helt væk. Nå, håber I har hygget jer siden sidst. Jeg tror det er en måned siden, vi sidst læste et kapitel. Det går det faktisk bare på uger. Jeg kan ikke helt huske det. Men nu skal vi læse videre på her. Og sidste gang, vores Fellowship of the Ring, de undslap sgu Balrogen. De undslap sgu det store ildmonster, der er opkaldt fra helvede. Jeg ved ikke hvad Sauron han har gjort et eller andet for at komme frem. Jeg har aldrig helt forstået det. Men den er jo sejt, super sejt monster. Det kan også sådan halvt flyve, og kan ikke helt flyve med sig. Jeg tror sådan, at sådan en svævehoppe. Og har sådan en ildpisk og et sværd, og jeg ved, sådan, det var bare et sejt monster. Og Gandalf, you shall not pass. Altså, what a crazy chapter, you know? Men lad os lige læse videre på bogen en gang her. Det var ikke den. Vi er nået til kapitel Lothlórien. Det lyder alt sprog. Det er godt det nemlig. Ja. This chapter 6 Lothlórien. Alas, I fear we cannot stay here longer, said Aragorn. He looked towards the mountains and held up his sword. Farewell, Gandalf, he cried. Did I not say to you, if we pass the doors of Moria, beware. Alas, that I spoke true. What hope have we without you? He turned to the company. We must do without hope, he said. At least we may yet be avenged. Let us grind ourselves and weep no more. Come. We have a long road and much to do. They rose and looked about them. Northward the dale ran up into a glen of shadows between two great arms of the mountains, above which three white peaks were shining. Celebdil, Fanudhil, Karathas. The mountains of Moria. At the head of the glen a torrent flowed like a white lace over an endless ladder of short falls, and a mist of foam hung in the air about the mountain's feet. Yonder is a dimple stair, said Aragorn, pointing to the falls, down the deep flowing way that climbs beside the torrent we should have come. If fortune had been kinder, or God has less cruel, said Gimli. There he stands smiling in the sun. He shook his fist at the furthest of the snow-capped peaks and turned away. To the east, the outflung arm of the mountains marched to a sudden end, and far lands could be described beyond them. Wide and vague to the south, the misty mountains receded endlessly, as far as sight could reach. Less than a mile away, and a little below them, for they still stood high up on the west side of the dale, there lay a mere mere med M-E-I, mere det M-A-I, altså mere. There lay a mere. It was long and oval, shaped like a great spearhead, thrust deep into the northern glen, but its southern end was beyond the shadows, under the sunlit sky. Yet it was very dark, a deep blue like clear evening sky, seen from a lamp-lit room. Its face was still and unruffled. About it lay a smooth sword, shelving down on all sides to its bare, unbroken rim. There lies the Mirror, deep, killed Sodom, said Gimli sadly. I remember that he said, "May you have joy of the sight. We can no longer linger here. Now long shall I journey here, have joy again. It is that I must hasten away, and he that must remain." The company now went down the road from the gates. It was rough and broken, fading to a winding track between heather and wind, and thrust amid the crackling stones. But still it could be seen that once long ago a greatly paved way had wound upwards from the lowlands to the dwarf kingdom. In places there were ruined works of stone beside the path, and mounds of green topped with slender birches of fir trees, sighing in the wind. And eastward bent led them hard by the sword of Miromir, and there not far from the roadside stood a single column broken at the top. That is Durin's stone, cried Gimli. I cannot pass without turning aside for a moment to look at the wonder of the dale. Be swift then, said Aragorn, looking back towards the gates. The sun sinks early, the orcs will not, maybe come out till after dusk, but we must be far away before nightfall. The moon is almost spent and it will be dark tonight. Come with me, Frodo, cried the dwarf, springing from the road. I will not have you go without seeing Kessel Saddam. He ran down the long green slope. Frodo followed slowly, drawn by the still blue water. In spite of hurt and weariness, Sam came up behind. Beside the standing stone, Gimli halted and looked up. It was cracked and weather-worn, and the faint runes upon its side could not be read. This pillar marks the spot where Durin first looked in Miromir, said the dwarf. Let us look ourselves once. Here we go. They stooped over the dark water. At first they could see nothing. They slowly saw the forms of the encircling mountains mirrored in a profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of white flames above them. Beyond there was a space of sky. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars. Though sunlight was in the sky above, of their own stooping forms no shadow could be seen. Kessel Sarim, fair wonderful, said Gimli. There lies the crown of Durin, till he wakes farewell. They bowed and turned away and hastened back up to the greensward to the road again. What do you see? What did you see? Said Pippin to Sam, but Sam was too deep in thought to answer. The road now turned south and went quickly downwards, running out from between the arms of the dell. Some way below the mere they came on a deep well of water, clear as crystal, from which a fresh it fell over a stone lip and ran glistening and gurgling down a steep rocky channel. Here is a spring of which the silver load rises, said Gilman. Do not think. It is very cold. It is icy cold. Soon it becomes a swift river, and it gathers water from many other mountain streams, said Aragorn. Our road leads beside it for many miles, for I shall take you by the road that Gandalf chose. At first I hoped to come to the woods where the silver load flows into the great river, out yonder. They looked as he pointed, and before them they could see the stream leaping down to the flow of the valley, and then running on, and then way into the lower lands until it was lost in a golden lace. There lie the woods of Lothlórien, said Legolas. That is the fairest of all the dwellings of my people. There are no trees like trees of the land, for in autumn their leaves fall not, but turn to gold. Not till the spring comes and the new green opens do they fall, and then the boughs are laden with yellow flowers, and the floor of the wood is golden, and golden is the roof, and its pillars are of silver, for the bark of the trees is smooth and grey. So still our songs in Mirkwood. Say, my heart will be glad if we were beneath the eaves of the wood, and it were springtime. My heart will be glad even in winter, said Aragorn. But it lies many miles away. Let us hasten. For some time Frodo and Sam managed to keep up with the others, but Aragorn was leading them at a great pace, and after a while they lagged behind. They had eaten nothing since the early morning. Sam's cot was burning like fire, and his head felt light. In spite of the shining sun, the wind seemed chill, and the warm darkness of Moria. He shivered. Frodo felt every step more painful, and he gasped for breath. At last Legolas turned, and seeing them now far behind, he spoke to Aragorn. The others halted, and Aragorn ran back, calling to Boromir to come with him. I'm sorry, Frodo, he cried, full of concern. So much has happened this day, and we have such need of haste. that I've forgotten that you were hurt, and Sam too. You have spoken. We have done nothing to ease you as we ought, though all the orcs of Moria were after us. Come now. A little further on there is a place where we can rest for a while. There I'll do what I can for you. Come, Bomber, we will carry them. Soon afterwards they came upon another stream that ran down from the west and joined its bubbling water with their hurrying silver load. Together they plunged over a fall of green-hued stone and foamed down into a dell. About it stood fir trees, short and bent, and its sides were steep and clothed with hart's tongue, and shrubs of whortleberry. At the bottom there was a level space through which the stream flowed noisily over shining pebbles. Here they rested. It was now nearly 3 hours after noon, and they had come only a few miles from the gates. Already the sun was westering. While Gimli and the 2 younger hobbits kindled a fire of brush and firewood and drew water, Aragorn sent Sam and Frodo. Sam's wound was not deep, but it looked ugly, and Aragorn's face was grave as he examined it. After a moment he looked up with relief. Good luck, Sam, he said. Many have received worse than this in payment for the slaying of their first orc. Their cut is not poison, and as the wounds of orc blades too often are. It should heal well when I have tended, bathed when Gimli has heated the water. He opened his pouch and drew out some withered leaves. They are dry, and some of their virtue has gone, he said. But here I'll have still some of the leaves of Athelas. Oh, det er også gerne vind. Kom, Oscar. Nå, okay. Oscar, kom. Nej. Nå, okay. Kom nu. Ja, kom nu. Okay. Alas, that I gathered near Weathertop, crushed one in the water, and washed the wound clean, and I will bind it. Now it is your turn, Frodo. I'm all right, said Frodo, reluctant to have his garments touched. All I need was some food and a little rest. No, said Aragorn. We must have a look and see what the hammer and the anvil have done to you. I still marvel that you are alive after all. That you are alive at all. Gently he stripped off Frodo's old jacket and worn tunic and gave a gasp of wonder. Then he laughed. The silver corset shimmered before his eyes like the light upon a rippling sea. Carefully he took it off and held it up, and the gems on it glittered like stars, and the sound of shaking rings were like the tinkle of a rain in a pool. Oscar? Ja, kom ind du. Kom. Kom. Skal du være med, eller skal du ikke være med? Du skal ikke være med, okay. Look, my friends, he called. Here's a pretty hobbit skin to wrap an elven priceling in. If it were known that hobbits had such hides, all the hunters of Middle-earth were riding to the Shire, and all the arrows of all the hunters in the world would be in vain, and all the arrows of all the hunters in the world would be in vain, said Gimli, gazing at the mail in wonder. It is a mithril coat. Mithril! I've never seen or heard tell of one so fair. Is this the coat that Gandalf spoke of? Then he undervalued it, but it was well given. I have often wondered what you and Bilbo were doing so close in his little room. I've often wondered what you and Bilbo were doing so close in the little room, said Merry. Bless the old hobbit. I love him more than ever. I hope we get a chance to telling him about it. There was a dark and blackened bruise on Frodo's right side and breast. Under the middle was a shirt of soft leather, but at one point the rings had been driven through it. into the flesh. Frodo's left side also was scored and bruised where he had been hurled against the wall. While others set the food ready, Aragorn bathed the herds with water in which Athelas was steeped. The pungent fragrance filled the dell, and all those who stooped over the streaming water felt refreshed and strengthened. Soon Frodo felt the pain leave him, and his breath grew easy. Though he was stiff and sore to the touch for many days, Aragorn bound some soft pads of cloth at his side. "The meal is marvelous light," he said. "Put it on again if you can bear it. My heart is glad to know that you have such a coat. Do not lay it aside, even in sleep, unless fortune brings you where you are safer for a while, and that will seldom chance while your the quest lasts." When they had eaten, the company got ready to go on. They put out the fire, and hid all the traces of it. Then, climbing out of the dell, they took to the road again. They had not gone far before the sun sank behind the westward heights, and great shadows crept down the mountain sides. Dusk veiled their feet, and mist rose in the hollows. Away in the east, the evening light lay pale upon the dim lands of distant plain and wood. Sam and Frodo, now feeling eased and greatly refreshed, were able to go at a fair pace, and with only one brief halt, Aragorn led the company on for nearly 3 more hours. It was dark. Deep night had fallen. There were many clear stars, but a fast waning moon would not be seen till late. Gimli and Frodo were at the rear, walking softly and not speaking, listening for any sound upon the road behind. At length Gimli broke the silence. "Not a sound but the wind," he said. "There are no goblins near, or my ears are made of wood. It is to be hoped that the orcs will be content. My driving force from Moria, and maybe they are with all their purpose. They had nothing else to do with us. With the ring, though orcs will often pursue foes many leagues into the plain, they have a fallen captain to avenge." Thor did not answer. He looked at the sting, and the blade was dull. Yet he had heard something, or thought he had. As soon as the shadows had fallen about them and the road behind was dim, he had heard again the quicker patter of feet. Even now he heard it. He turned swiftly. There were 2 tiny gleams of light behind, or for a moment he thought he saw them, but at once they slipped aside and vanished. "What is it?" said the dwarf. "I don't know," said Frodo. "I thought I heard feet, and I thought I saw light like eyes. I have thought so often since we first entered Moria." Gimli halted and stooped to the ground. "I heard nothing but a night speech of plain stone, he said. "Come, let us hurry. The others are outside." The night wind blew chill up the valley to meet them. Before them a white-grey shadow loomed, and they had heard an endless rustle of leaves, like poplars in the breeze. "Lothlórien!" cried Legolas. "Lothlórien! We've come to the eaves of the Golden Wood. Alas, that it is winter." Under the night the trees stood tall before them, arched over the road and stream that ran suddenly beneath their spreading boughs. In the dim light of the stars their stems were grey, while the quivering leaves a hint of fallow gold. "Lothlórien," said Aragorn. "Glad I am to hear again the wind in the trees. We are still little more than 5 leagues from the gates, but we can go no further. Here let us hope that the virtue of the elves will keep us tonight from the peril that comes behind." If elves indeed still dwell here in the darkening world," said Gimli, "it is long since any of my folk journeyed hither, back to the land whence we wandered in the ages long ago. No, it is long since any of my own folk journeyed hither, back to the land whence we wandered in ages long ago," said Legolas. But we hear that Lothlórien is not yet deserted, for there is a secret power here that holds evil from the land. Nevertheless, its folk are seldom seen, and maybe they dwell now deep in the woods and far from the northern border. "Indeed, deep in those wells," said Aragorn, and sighed as if some memory stirred in him. We must fend for ourselves tonight. We'll go forward a short way until the trees are all about us, and then we will turn aside from the path and seek a place to rest in. He stepped forward, but Boromir stood irresolute and did not follow. Is there no other way? He said. What other fair way would you desire? Said Aragorn. A plain road. Though it lead through a hedge of swords, said Boromir. But a strange path that has commonly been led, and so far to ill fortune. Against my will we passed under the shades of Moria. To our loss we now must enter the golden wood, you say. But of that perilous land we have heard in Gondor, it is said that a few come out who once go in, and of that few none had escaped unscathed. Say unscathed, but if you say unchanged, then maybe you speak the truth, said Aragorn. But law reigns in Gondor, Boromir. If in the city of those who once were wise, they now speak evil of Lothlórien. Believe what you will, there is no other way for us, unless you will go back to the Moria Gate, or scale the pathless mountains, or swim the great river all alone. Let it on, said Boromir, but it is perilous. Perilous indeed, said Aragorn. Fair and perilous, but only evil need for fear it, or those who bring some evil with them. Follow me. He had gone little more than a mile into the forest when they came upon another stream flowing down swiftly from the tree-clad slopes that climbed back westward towards the mountains. They were splashing over fall away among the shadows on their right. Its dark, hurrying waters ran across the pass before them, and joined the Silverlord in a swirl of dim pools among the roots of trees. Here is Nimrodel, said Legolas. Of this stream the Sylvan elves made many songs long ago, and still we sing them in the north, remembering the rainbow on its falls and the golden flowers that floated in its foam. It is dark now, and the bridge of Nimrodel is broken down. I will bathe my feet, for it is said that the water is healing to the weary. He went forward and climbed down the deep cloven bank and stepped into the stream. Follow me, he cried. The water is not deep, let us wade across. On a further bank we can rest, and the sound of the falling water may bring us sleep and forgetfulness of grief. One by one they climbed down and followed Legolas. For a moment Frodo stood near the brink and let the water flow over his tired feet. It was cold, but his touch was clean, and as he went on and it mounted to his knees, he felt that the stain of travel and all weariness was washed from his limbs. When all the company had crossed, they sat and rested and ate a little food, and Legolas told them tales of Lothlórien, that the elves of Mirkwood still kept in the hearts of sunlight and starlight upon the meadows by the great river before the world was grey. At length a silence fell, and they heard the music of the waterfall running sweetly in the shadows. Almost Frodo fancied that he could hear a voice singing, mingled with the sound of the water. Do you hear of the voice of Nimrodel? Said Legolas. Asked Legolas. I will sing you a song of the maiden Nimrodel, who bore the name at the stream beside which she lived long ago. It's a fair song in a woodland tongue, but this is how it runs in the Westron speech, as some in Rivendell now sing it. In a soft voice, he hardly to be heard amid the rustle of the leaves above them, he began. An elven maid the wager fold, a shining star by the day. Her mantle weird was hemmed with gold, her shoes of silver grey. A star was bound upon her brows, a light was on her hair, a sun upon the golden boughs, and Lothlórien the fair. Her hair was long, her limbs were white, a fair she was free. And the wind she went as light as leaf of linden tree. Besides the fall of Nimrodel, the water clear and cold. Her voice is falling silver fell into the shining pool. Where now she wanders none can tell, in sunlight or in shade. For lost of yore was Nimrodel, and in the mountain straight. The elven ship in heaven grey, beneath the mountain lee, awaited her for many day. Beside the roaring sea, a wind by night in northern lands arose and louder cried, and drove the ship from elven strands across the steaming tide. Rain down came din, the land was lost, the mountains sinking grey, beyond the hearing waves that tossed the plumes of blinding spray. Amroth beheld the falling shore, and now low beyond the swell, and cursed the faithless ship that bore him far from Nimrodel. Of old he was an elven king, a lord of tree and glen, when golden were the bows in spring in fair Lothlórien. From home to sea they saw him leap as arrows from the string, and dive into the water deep as new upon the wing. The wind was in his flowing hair, and the foam about him shone. Afar saw him strong and fair, go riding like a swan. But from the west has come the word, and on the hither shore, no tidings ill folk have heard of Amroth evermore. The voice of Legolas faltered, and the song ceased. I cannot sing any more, he said. That is but a part, for I have forgotten much. It is long and sad, for it tells how sorrow came upon Lothlórien, Lorien of the blossom, when the dwarves awakened even the mountains. But the dwarves did not make me evil, said Gimli. I said not so. Yet evil came, answered Legolas sadly. Then many of the elves of Nimrodel kindred left their dwellings, many had departed, and she was lost far in the south in the passes of the White Mountains. And she came not to the ship where Amroth, her lover, waited for her, but in spring when the wind in the leaves, the echo of her voice may still be heard by the forest that bear her name, and when the wind is in the south, the voice of Amroth comes up from the sea. For Nimrodel flows into the Silverlode. The elves called Celebrant, and Celebrant into Anduin the Great, and Anduin flows into the bay of Belfalas, whence the elves of Lothlórien set sail. But neither Nimrodel nor Amroth came ever back. It is told that she had a house built in the branches of a tree that grew near the falls, for that was a custom of the elves of Lothlórien, to dwell in trees, and maybe it is so still. Therefore they were called the Godnathistorie, the tree people. Deep in the forest the trees are very great. The people of the wood did not dwell in the ground like dwarves, nor build strong places of stone before the shadow came. And even in latter days, dwelling in trees might be thought safer than sitting in the ground. But in latter days, dwelling in the trees might be thought safer than sitting on the ground, said Gimli. He looked across the stream to the road that led back to Dimbled, and then up into the roof of dark boughs above. Your words bring good counsel, Gimli, said Aragorn. We cannot build a house, but tonight we'll do as the Godnathistorie and seek refuge in the treetops if we can. We have sat here beside the road already longer than wise. The company now turned aside from the path and went into the shadow of the deeper woods, westward along the mountain stream, away from Silverlode. Not far from the falls of Nimrodel, they found a cluster of trees, some of which overhung the stream. Their great trunks were of mighty girth, but their height could not be guessed. I will climb up, said Legolas. I am at home among trees, by root or bough. Though these trees are of a kind strange to me, save as a name in song, Melon, they are called, and are those that bear the yellow blossom, but I have never climbed in one. I will see now what is their shape and way of growth. Whatever it may be, said Pippin, there will be marvelous trees indeed, if they can offer any yet the night, except to birds. I cannot sleep on a perch. Then dig a hole in the ground, said Legolas. If that is more after the fashion of your kind, but you must dig swift and deep if you wish to hide from orcs. He sprang lightly up from the ground and caught a branch that grew from the trunk high above his head. But even as he swung there for a moment, a voice spoke suddenly from the tree shadows above him. Daro. It is said in a commanding tone that Legolas dropped back to the earth in surprise and fear. He shrank against the bole of the tree. Stand still, he whispered to us. Do not move or speak. There was a sound of soft laughter over their heads, and then another clear voice spoke in an elven language. Frodo could understand little of what was said, for the speech that the Sylvan folk east of the mountains used among themselves was like that of a whist. Okay, Oscar. Legolas looked up and answered in the same language. Who are they? What do they say? Asked Merry. They are elves, said Sam. Can you hear the voices? Yes, they are elves, said Legolas. And they say that you breathe so loud that they could shoot you in the dark. Sam hastily put his head over his mouth, his hands over his mouth. But they also say that you need to have no fear. They have been aware of us for a long while. They heard my voice across the Nimrudal. Yeah! And knew that it was of one of the northern kindred, and therefore they did not hinder their crossing. And afterwards they heard my song. Now the bid me climb up with Frodo, for they seemed to have had some tidings of him and of a journey. The other asked to wait a little and to keep watch at the foot of the tree, until they decided what is to be done. Nu er det lige meget en gang. Ja. Hej og velkommen tilbage. Vi skulle lige nå aftensmad, og det bliver lidt pandekager. Det er meget lækkert. Nå, så har jeg lige lagt konde. Skal vi lige drikke en gang? Ej, det bliver lidt koldt. Okay, det er fint, det er ikke nok. Out of shadows, a ladder was let down. It was made of rope, silver grey and glimmering in the dark, and though it looked slender, it proved strong enough to bear many men. Legolas ran lightly up, and Frodo followed slowly. Behind came Sam, trying to breathe loudly, not to breathe loudly. The branches of the melon tree grew up nearly straight from the trunk and then swept upward, but near the top the main stem divided into a crown of many boughs, and among these they found there had been built a wooden platform, or flet as such things were called in those days. The elves called it a talarn. It was reached by a bound hole in the center, through which the ladder passed. When Frodo came at last up onto the fleet, he found Legolas seated with 3 other elves. They were clad in a shadowy grey, and could not be seen among the tree stems, unless they moved suddenly. They stood up, and one of them uncovered a small lamp that gave out a slender silver beam. He held it up, looking at Frodo's face and Sam's. Then he shut off the light again and spoke words of welcome in his elven tongue. Frodo spoke haltingly in return. Welcome. Then the elves said again in the Conomlan language, speaking slowly, We seldom use my tongue, but our own. We dwell now in the heart of the forest, and do not willingly have dealings with any other folk. Even our own kindred in the north are sundered from us, but there are some of us still who go abroad from the gathering of news and the watching of our enemies, and then speak the language of other lands. I am one. Haldir is my name. My brothers Rumiel and Oropin speak little of your tongue, but we heard of your comings, and from the messengers of Lothlórien past Lothlórien. On the way home up the dim was there, we had not heard of hobbits or halflings for many a long year, and did not know that they yet dwelt in the Middle Earth. You do not look evil, and since you come with an elf of our kindred, we are willing to befriend you. As Elrond asked, though it is not our custom to lead strangers through our land, but you must stay here tonight. How many are you? 8, said Legolas. Myself, 4 hobbits, and 2 men, one of whom, Aragorn, is an elf friend of the folk of Westernese. The name of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is known in Lothlórien, said Haldir, and he has the favor of the lady, and all then is well, but you have yet spoken only of 7. The 8th is a dwarf, said Legolas. A dwarf, said Haldir. That is not well. We have not heard dealings with the dwarves. We have not dreamed with the dwarves since the dark days. They are not permitted in our land. I cannot allow him to pass. But he is from the lonely mountains, one of Dane's trusted people, and friend to Elrond, said Frodo. Elrond himself chose him to be one of our companions, and he has been brave and faithful. The elves spoke together in soft voices and questioned Legolas in their own tongue. Very good, said Haldir at last. We will do this, though it is against our liking. If Aragorn said that Legolas will guard him and answer for him, he shall pass, but he must go blindfolded through Lothlórien. But we must debate no longer. Your folk must not remain on the ground. We have been keeping watch on the rivers ever since we saw a great troop of orcs going north towards Moria along the skirts of the mountains. Many days ago, wolves are howling on the woods borders. If you have indeed come from Moria, the peril cannot be far behind. Tomorrow early you must go on. The 4 hobbits shall climb up here and stay with us. We do not fear them. There is another Talon in the next tree. The other must take refuge. You, Legolas, must answer to us for them. Call off if anything is amiss. I have an eye on the dwarf. Legolas at once went down the ladder to take Haldir's message, and soon afterwards Merry and Pippin clambered up on the high fleet. They were out of breath and seemed rather scared. "But here," said Merry, panting, "we have locked up your blankets as well as our own. Strider has hidden all the rest of our package in a deep drift of leaves." "You have no need of your burden," said Haldir. "It is cold in the treetops in winter, though the wind tonight is in the south, but we have food and drink to give you that will drive away the night chill, and we have skins and cloaks to spare." The hobbits accepted the second and far better supper very gladly. Then they wrapped themselves warmly, not only in their fur cloaks of the elves, but in their own blankets as well, and tried to go to sleep. But weary as they were, only Sam found that easy to do. Hobbits do not like heights, and do not sleep upstairs even when they have any stairs. The fleet was not at all to the liking as a bedroom. It had no walls, not even a rail. Only on one side was there a light-plated screen which could be moved and fixed in different places according to the wind. Pippin went on talking for a while. "I hope if I do go to sleep in this bird loft, they shall roll that sound off," he said. "Once I do get to sleep," said Sam, "I shall go and sleep in whether I roll off or no. And the less said, the sooner I'll drop off, if you take my meaning." Frodo lay for some time awake and looked up at the stars glinting through the pale roof of quivering leaves. Sam was snoring at his side long before he himself closed his eyes. He could dimly see the grey forms of 2 elves sitting motionless with their arms about their knees, speaking in whispers. The other had gone down to take up his watch on one of the lower branches. At last, lulled by the wind in the boughs above and the sweet murmur of the falls of Nimrodel below, Frodo fell asleep with the song of Legolas running in his mind. Late in the night he woke. The other hobbits were asleep. The elves were gone. The single moon was gleaming dimly among the leaves. The wind was still a little way off. He heard a harsh laugh and the tread of many feet on the ground below. There was a ring of metal. The sounds died slowly away, and the seemed to go southward on into the wood. A head appeared suddenly through the hole in the fleet. Frodo sat up in alarm and saw that it was a grey-hooded elf. He looked towards the hobbits. "What is it?" said Frodo. Yats, said the elf in a hissing whisper, and cast onto the fleet the rope ladder rolled up. "Orcs," said Frodo. What are they doing?" But the elf had gone. There were no more sounds. Even the leaves were silent, and the very falls seemed to be hushed. Frodo sat and shivered in his wraps. He was thankful that they had not been caught on the ground. But he felt that the trees offered little protection except concealment. Orcs were as keen as hounds on the scent. It was said that they could also climb. He drew out sting. It flashed and glittered like a blue flame, and then slowly faded again and grew dull. In spite of the fading of his sword, the feeling of immediate danger did not leave Frodo. Rather, it grew stronger. He got up and crawled to the opening and peered down. He was almost certain that he could hear stealthy movements at the tree's foot far below. Not elves, for the woodland folk were altogether noiseless in their movements. Then he heard faintly a sound like sniffing, and something seemed to be scrabbling on the bark of the tree trunk. He stared down into the dark, holding his breath. Something was now climbing slowly, and his breath came like a soft hissing through closed teeth. Then coming up close to the stem, Frodo saw two pale eyes. They stopped and gazed upward, unwinking. Suddenly they turned away, and a shadowy figure slipped around the trunk of the tree and vanished. Immediately afterwards, Haldir came climbing swiftly up through the branches. There was something in this tree that had never been seen before, he said. It was not an orc. It fled as soon as I touched the tree stem. It seemed to be very, and to have some skill in trees, or I might have thought that it was one of you hobbits. I did not shoot, for I dare not arouse any cries. We cannot risk battle. A strong company of orcs had passed. They crossed the Nimrudal curse, their foul feet in its clean water, and went on down the old road beside the river. They seemed to pick up some scent, and they searched the ground for a while near the place where you halted. The three of us could not challenge 100, so we went ahead and spoke with faint voices, leading them on into the wood. Orphan has now gone in haste back to our dwelling to warn our people. None of the orcs will ever return out of Lothlórien, and there will be many elves hidden on the northern border before another nightfall. But you must take the road south as soon as it is fully light. Yeah. Day came pale from the east. As the light grew, it filtered through the leaves of the mallow, and seemed to the hobbits that the early sun of a cool summer morning was shining. Pale blue sky peeped among the moving branches, looking through an opening on the south side of the flit. Frodo saw all the valley of the Silver Lode lying like a sea of fallow gold, tossing gently in the breeze. The morning was still young and cold when the company set out again, guided now by Haldir and his brother Rúmil. "Farewell, sweet Nimrudal," cried Legolas. Frodo looked back and caught a gleam of a white foam among the grey tree stems. "Farewell," he said. It seemed to him that he would never hear again a running water so beautiful, forever blending its innumerable notes in an endless change from music. They went back to the path that still went on along the west side of the Silver Lode, and for some way they followed it southward. There was the prints of orc feet in the earth, but soon Haldir turned aside into the trees and halted on the bank of the river under their shadows. There's one of my people yonder across the stream," he said. "Though you may not see him." He gave a call like the low whistle of a bird, and out of a thicket, young trees and elves stepped, clad in grey, but with hoods thrown back. His hair glinted like gold in the morning sun. Haldir skillfully cast over the stream a coil of grey rope, and he caught it and bound the end about a tree near the bank. "Silbrand is already a strong stream here, as you see," said Haldir. "It is run both swift and deep, and it's very cold. We do not set foot in it so far north unless we must. But in these days of watchfulness we do not make bridges. This is how we cross. Follow me." He made his end of the rope fast about another tree, and then ran lightly along it, over the river and back again, as if were on a road. "I can walk this path," said Legolas, "but the others have not the skill. Must they swim?" "No," said Haldir. "We have 2 more ropes." "But the others have not the skill. Must they swim?" "No," said Haldir. 2 more ropes. You will fasten them above the other, one shoulder high and another half high. And holding these, the strangers should be able to cross with care. When this slender bridge had been made, the company passed over cautiously and slowly, others more easily. Of the hobbits, Pippin proved the best. They were sure-footed, and he walked over quickly. He holding only with one hand, but he kept his eyes on the bank ahead and did not look down. Sam shuffled along, clutching hard and looking down into the pale, eddying water, as if it was a chasm in the mountains. He breathed with relief when he was safely across. "Live and learn," as MacGyver used to say, though he was thinking of gardening, not of rooting like a bird, nor trying to walk like a spider. Not even my Uncle Andy ever did a trick like that. When at length all the company was gathered on the east bank of the Silver Lode, the elves untied the ropes and called two of them. Rumel, who had remained on the other side, threw back to the last one, slung it on his shoulder, and with a wave of his hand went away, back to Nimrodel to keep watch. "Now, friends," said Haldir, "you've entered the Nath of Lothlórien, or the core, as you would say, for it is the land that lies like a spearhead between the arms of Silverlord and Anduin the Great. We allow no strangers to spy out the secrets of the Nath. Few indeed are permitted even to set foot there. As we agreed, I shall here blindfold the eyes of Gimli the dwarf. The others may walk free for a while until we come near to our dwellings, down in Egladil, in the angle between the waters." This was not at all to the liking of Gimli. "The agreement was made without my consent," he said. "I'll not walk blindfold like a beggar or prisoner. I am no spy. My folk have never had dealings with any of the servants of the enemy. Neither have we done harm to the elves, and no more like to betray you than Legolas or any of the other companions." "I do not doubt you," said Haldir. "Yet this is a law. I am not the master of the law, and cannot set it aside. I have done much in letting you set a foot over Celebrand." Gimli was obstinate. He planted his feet firmly apart and laid his hand upon the haft of his axe. "I will go forward," he said. "I will go back and seek my own land, where I am known to be true of word, though I perish alone in the wilderness." "You cannot go back," said Haldir sternly. "Now you have come thus far, you must be brought before the Lord and the lady. They should judge you to hold you or to give you leave as they will. You want to cross the rivers again, and behind you there are no secret sentinels that you cannot pass. You will be slain before you saw them." Gimli drew his axe before his belt. Haldir and his companions bent their bows. "A plague on dwarves and their stiff necks," said Legolas. "Come," said Aragorn. "If I am still to lead this company, you must do as I bid. It is hard upon the dwarf to be thus singled out. We will all be blindfolded, even Legolas. That will be the best, though it will make the journey slow and dull." Gimli laughed. I'm married troops of fools without look. But Haldir lead us all astray, like many blind beggars with one dog. But it'll be convenient. If only Legolas here shares my blackness." "I have an elf and a kinsman here," said Legolas, becoming angry in his turn. Now let us cry. "A plague on the stiff necks of elves," said Aragorn. "But the company shall be all fair alike. Come, bind her eyes, Haldir." I shall climb full immense for every forward and stop too, if do not lead us well," said Gimli, as they bound a cloth about his eyes. You'll have no claim," said Haldir. "I shall lead you well, and the paths are smooth and straight." "Alas for the folly of these days," said Legolas. "Here all are enemies of one enemy, and yet I must walk blind while the sun is merry in the woodland under leaves of gold." "Folly it may seem," said Haldir. "Indeed, in nothing it is the power of the Dark Lord more clearly shown than in the estrangement that divides all those who will oppose him. Yet so little faith and trust do we find now in the world beyond Lothlórien, unless maybe in Rivendell, that we dare not by our own trust endanger our land. We live now upon an island amid many perils, and our hands are more often upon the bowstring than upon the harp. The rivers long defended us, for they are sure guard no more. For the shadows crept northward all about us. Some speak of departing, and yet for that it always seems too late. The mountains to the west are growing evil. To the east the lands are waste and full of sound creatures. It is summoned that we cannot now safely pass southward through Rohan, and the mouths of the great river are watched by the enemy. If we could come to the shores of the sea, we should find no longer any shelter there. It is said there are still havens of the high elves, but they are far north and west, beyond the land of the halflings. But where that may be, though the Lord and Lady may know, I do not. Yesterday, or at least through the grass, guess you had seen us, said Mary. There are elf havens west of my land, the Shire, where the hobbit lives. Happy folk are hobbits to deal. There are elf havens west of my land, the Shire, where hobbits live. Happy folk are hobbits to dwell near the shores of the sea, said Haldir. It is long indeed since any of my folk have looked on it, yet still we remember in the song, tell me of these havens we walk. I cannot, said Mary. I have never seen them. I have never been out of my own land before, and if I had known where the old side was like, I don't think I should have had the heart to leave it. Not even to see fair Lothlórien, said Haldir. The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places, but still there is much that is fair. And though in all lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater. Some there among us who sing that the shadows will draw back and its peace shall come again. Yet I do not believe that the world about us will ever again be as it was of old, or the light of the sun as it was for the elves. I fear I will prove at best a truce in which they had made pass to the sea unhindered, and leave the Middle Earth forever. Alas, for Lothlórien that I love. It would be a poor life in a land where no melon grew. But if there are melon trees beyond the great sea, none have reported it. As I spoke thus, the company filed slowly among the paths in the wood, led by Haldir, while the other elf walked behind. They felt the ground beneath their feet smooth and soft, and after a while they walked more freely without fear of hurt or fall. Being the driver's side, Frodo found his hearing and other senses sharpened. He could smell the trees and the trodden grass. He could hear many different notes and the rustle of the leaves overhead. The river murmuring away on his right, and the thin, clear voices of birds high in the sky. He felt the sun upon his face and the hands when they passed through an open glade. As soon as he set foot upon the far bank of the Silver Lode, a strange feeling had come upon him, and it deepened as he walked on into the Neath. It seemed to him that he had stepped over a bridge of time into a corner of the elder days, and was now walking in a world that was no more in Rivendell. No more. Yeah. In Rivendell there was a memory of ancient things. In Lothlórien, the ancient things still lived on in a waking world. Evil had been seen and heard there. Sorrow had been known. The ills feared and disturbed the world outside. Wolves were howling, and the woods borders, but on the land of Lothlórien no shadow lay. All that day the company marched on until they felt the cool evening come, and heard the early night wind whispering among the many leaves. Then they rested and stepped without fear upon the ground, for the guides would not permit them to unbind their eyes, and they could not climb. In the morning they went on again, walking without haste. As soon as they halted and Frodo was aware that they had passed out under the shining sun, suddenly he heard the sound of many voices all around him. A marching host of elves had come up silently. They were hastening towards the northern borders to guard against any attack from Moria, and they brought news, some of which Haldir reported. The marauding orcs had been waylaid and almost all destroyed. The mermen had fled westward towards the mountains, and were being pursued. A strange creature also had been seen running with bent back and with hands near the ground. Like a beast, and yet not of beast shape, it had eluded capture, and they had not shot it, not knowing whether it was good or ill, and it had vanished down the silver lode southward. Also, said Hallia, they bring me a message from the Lord and Lady of the Godnathistorie. You are all to walk free, even the dwarf Gimli. It seems that the lady knows who and what in each member of your company. New messages have come from Rivendell, perhaps. He removed the bandage first from Gimli's eyes. Your pardon, he said, bowing low. Look on us now with friendly eyes. Look, I'm glad for you are the first. Look on us now. Your pardon, he said, bowing low. Look on us now with friendly eyes. Look and be glad, for you are the first dwarf to behold the trees of the Nath of Lothlórien since Durin's day. And his eyes were in turn uncovered, for they looked and caught his breath. They were standing in an open space. To the left stood a great mound covered with a sward of grass and green and springtime in the elder days. Upon it, as a double crown, grew into circles of trees. Their outside had bark of snowy white and were leafless but beautiful in the sharp, shapely nakedness. Beautiful in their shapely nakedness. The inner one were melon trees of great height, still arid in pale gold. High amid the branches of a towering tree that stood in the center of all that gleamed, a white fled. At the feet of the trees and all about the green hillside, the grass was studded with small golden flowers shaped like stars. Among them, nodding on slender stalks, were other flowers, white and palest green. They glimmered as a mist amid the rich hue of the grass. Over all the sky was blue, and the sun of afternoon glowed upon the hill and cast long green shadows beneath the trees. Behold, you are come to Seven Amroth, said Haldir. For this is the heart of ancient realm. It was long ago, and here is the Mount of Amroth, where in happier days his high house was built. Here ever bloom the winter flowers in the unfading grass, the yellow Eleanor and the pale Nibredil. Here we will stay a while and come to the city of the Galadrim at dusk. The other cast themselves down upon the fragrant grass, but Fodus to the wild still lost in wonder. It seemed to him that he had stepped through a high window, looked on a vanished world. A light was upon it for which his language had no shame, and all that he saw was shapely, but the shapes seemed at once clear-cut, as they had been first conceived and drawn at the uncovering of his eyes, and ancient, as if they had endured forever. He saw no color but those he knew, gold and white and blue and green, but they were fresh and pregnant, and as if he had that moment first perceived them and made for them names new and wonderful, in which here no heart he could mourn for summer or for spring. No blemish or sickness or deformity could be seen in anything that grew upon the earth. On the land of Lothlórien there was no stain. He turned and saw that Sam was now standing beside him, looking around with a puzzled expression, and rubbing his eyes as if he was not sure that he was awake. It's sunlight and bright day, right enough, he said. I thought the elves were all for moon and stars, but this is more elvish than anything I've ever heard tell of. I feel as if I was inside a song, if you take my meaning. Harley looked at them, and he seemed indeed to take the meaning of both though and word. He smiled. You feel the power of the Lady of Galadrim, he said. It will please you to climb with me up Seven Amroth. They followed him as he stepped lightly up the grass-clad slopes. Though he walked and breathed, and about him living leaves and flowers were stirred by the same cool wind as fanned his face. Frodo felt that he was in a timeless land that did not fade or change or fall into forgetfulness. When he had gone past again into the outer world, still Frodo, the wanderer from the Shire, would walk there upon the grass, among Eleanor and Nimrodil in fair Lothlórien. They entered a circle of white trees. As it did so, the south wind blew upon Seren Amroth, and sighed among the branches. Frodo stood still, hearing far off great seas upon beaches that had long ago been washed away, and serp and seabirds crying, whose race had perished from the earth. Haldir had gone on and was now climbing to their high fleet. As Frodo prepared to follow him, he laid his hand upon the tree beside the ladder. Never before had he been so suddenly and so keenly aware of the feel and texture of a tree's skin, and of the life within it. He felt the light in wood and the touch of it, neither as forester nor as carpenter. It was the light of the living tree itself. As he stepped out at last upon the lofty platform, Haldir took his hand and turned himself towards the south. "Look this way first," he said. Frodo looked and saw still at some distance a hill of many mighty trees, or a city of green towers, which it was he could not tell. Out of it seemed to him that the power and light came, that he held all the land in his way. He longed suddenly to fly like a bird to rest in this green city. Then he looked eastward and saw all the land of Lothlórien running down to the pale gleam of Anduin, the great river. He lifted his eyes across the river, and all the light went out, and he was back again in the world he knew. Beyond the river, the land appeared flat and empty, formless and vague. So far away it rose again like a wall, dark and dreary. The sun that lay on Lothlórien had no power to enlighten the shadow of the distant height. "There lies the fastness of southern Mirkwood," said Haldir. "It is clad in forests of dark fear, where the trees strive one against another, and their branches not rot and wither. In their midst, upon a stony high, stands Dol Guldur, where long the hidden enemy had his dwelling. Fear that now it is inhabited again, and with power sevenfold. A black cloud lies often over it of late. In this high place you may see the two powers that are opposed one to another, and ever they strive now in thought. But whereas the light perceived the very heart of the darkness, its own secret had not been discovered, not yet. He turned and climbed swiftly down, and they followed him. At the hill's foot, Frodo found Aragorn standing still and silent as a tree, but in his hand was a small golden bloom of Elanor, and a light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him, he knew that he had beheld things as they once had been in the same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord, tall and fair, and he spoke words in Elvish tongue to whom Frodo could not see. "Arwen vanimildra namail," he said, and then he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought, he looked at Frodo and smiled. Here's the heart of Elvendorn on earth," he said, "and here my heart dwells ever, unless there be a light beyond the dark roads that we still must tread, you and I. Come with me." And taking Frodo's hand in his, he left the hill of Seren Amroth, that came there never again as living man. Damn, så det kapitel handlede om, hvordan man oplever, ligesom der er flere arter af elver, og man hører ligesom om den dørke tid mellem elverne og dværgene. Altså, de har været i krig. Der er sket noget forfærdeligt. Det er der tydeligvis. Der er stadig noget giveligt, men det er også sådan, de sad stadig sådan tilbage ude i deres tid, og deres sprog, og det hele jo, at de bare sådan, men det er også noget at gøre med, at de heller ikke er så sociale, det de holder med sig for dem selv. Og det kan man jo godt se et sted, hvorfor de gør, fordi de arver mange ting igennem, og de vil gerne passe på den skov, og det de har jo, det er så fedt jo, man de gør det, men det er også på sådan, ja, det er meget secluded, det er det virkelig, men stadig sådan, at de har nogen stadig kan forstå nogen. Altså Haldal der, han kunne godt forstå, at sådan, hans to brødre kunne forstå meget lidt, men så sådan mest elvesprog, ikke? Men altså bare sådan, jeg ved ikke helt, hvad Tolkien hvor han har fået inspiration fra derfra, fordi det er jo gyldne blade, det er helt sådan efterårsblade-agtigt. Men det er om vinteren, og det er stadig blade, og det er lys, og det er dejligt, men jeg tænker bare på, hvad nu sådan det regner, og det ligger bare på platform, der er jo ikke snak om, der er et tag, taget af blade, men det er jo alligevel regn imellem bladene. Så hvad gør de der? Fordi deres eneste væg, det er sådan en vent, sådan en papirskærm, ej, det er sådan ikke på sådan en kan dreje engang, så det skal ikke for vinden. Men de har ikke sådan noget tag, så hvad gør de egentlig, når det regner? Altså regner det bare på dem sådan, nå okay, du vil blive våd en gang, men altså, de har ikke nogen tag. Men de er meget ud af sanser, og det er dejligt, at du froder mig også ud i sine sanser. Og mærke og føle naturen. Altså sanserne på skarpen, og det minder mig om, at skuespillerøvelser har prøvet. Det var vildt. Det var sådan med bind for øjnene og det hele, hvor man bare skal guides efter sanser. Nå, det var simpelthen kapitel 6. Lige se, om jeg langt det næste kapitel er. Jeg kan læse det i dag. Lige se, kan læse det i dag. Gider det? Er der sådan 20 sider? Det er også... Det er sådan... Også sådan 20 sider. Det er nogle korte kapitler nu her. Jeg kunne godt overveje at læse det faktisk. Det er en rigtig god bog. Nå. Det er simpelthen det for i dag. Tusind tak fordi at du så med. Jeg håber at du sover godt nu. Dig derude. En lille godnathistorie. Så ja. Godnat. Sov godt. Jeg skal have lidt faktisk kun lige nu.